to understand or what could be the broad agenda for transition in agriculture and water. Agriculture is the maximum user of water. 80 to 90% of the water goes into agriculture. So we have to talk about them together. And what is the need for managing sustainable transition in agriculture and water? Here you talk about the dominant paradigms in both in water and agriculture. As I'm saying, they are very related. And it so happens that we are sitting at a place, as Professor mentioned, the citadel of this paradigm of water, the kind of paradigm that we have right now. In water, it all started from here. Then we are sitting right now, the old approach to irrigation and water resource development, all the things started here. But this, and finally, it followed into the agricultural paradigm. And these paradigms, increasingly there is evidence coming up from various parts of the country saying that these paradigms are both environmentally unsustainable. They have gone on for a long time, but going forward, it's going to be getting tougher. And they are also socially unjust because they reward a lot of people. That's the second issue there. So this overall paradigm is facing a lot of crises. And what's evidence that we have is not going into the details of it. We all know if you are part of the discussions. In water, for example, there's a lot of discussion on rivers growing effluent water scarcity. Bangalore city was recently in the news saying that it has run out of water. There's no funding there. So that kind of thing is happening there. And in many other parts of the country, water scarcity is happening. That's a very phenomenal kind of thing. India was supposed to be a water surplus country till long ago, till a recent time. But now we are getting into the water stress kind of framework. Our river systems, a lot of problems with them. I mean, there are a lot of issues. As I'm saying, I won't be able to go into any of these issues very specifically, but we can broadly understand that river systems are undergoing a number of problems. The three problems are already mentioned there. One is the decreasing flow. That flow in rivers is really going down, and the heavy pollution load in the rivers, and also the catchment where the water is coming from. That is neglected. The river system, surface water systems are undergoing a lot of stress. Similarly, groundwater is overdrawn the groundwater. A lot of reports are coming up and showing that water levels in the country are decreasing, and that's many parts of the country are very dry. And so that drinking water shortage and also water quality. These are the kind of issues that we normally talk about in water in relation to the dominant paradigm. And what I'm trying to say is that these issues actually come from a kind of paradigm that we have followed, or a kind of a framework or framing of issues in a certain manner from which all these problems have started. In agriculture, similarly, there's a lot of discussion. Again, this is a part of Indian discussions. In fact, not only India, in France also, the entire Europe farmers are agitating. Even as we speak, there are farmers sitting outside Delhi in an agitation over a 1.5 month long agitation. They're sitting there. What is the problem in agriculture? These are the kind of issues, dominant issues that we can highlight. Low farm incomes. Many studies recently have shown, as recent as 2019, the income of an average farmer is supposed to be 10,000 rupees. This comes to something like $13 per day. That's the kind of transition that you have. And then you have, on the other hand, you have stagnant or slow growing farm incomes coupled with high cost of cultivation. Cost of cultivation is going up because the chemical use in agriculture has really gone up. The use of hazardous chemicals, especially pesticides. Actually, you talk about pesticides. So we, the company that I represent, also is focused on management of pesticides. So this is the primary evil that is happening. It's actually evil, is what we would say, that though it tries to protect this thing, and in Hindi we call it medicine. It's called dawai in Hindi, but actually it's not the medicine, it's actually poison. So, in addition to spoiling the environment and the food systems, the cost of cultivation also goes up. And there's a steady demand from farmers to increase the price, and discussions about minimum support price also. Yeah. Then, if income is low and expenditure is high, naturally debt burden increases. And we also heard a lot about farmer suicides happening in India, along with growing debt. Coupled to that, there are a few other issues which I've just flagged there. So, Pal Singh is here, he's an expert on agricultural markets. So farmers have a lot of problems facing agricultural markets. Prices are unsteady, especially of the perishable commodities. How to approach markets, how to work with markets. Farmers are trying to find out there's a growing climate risk, and several nutrition challenges also. In India, the adult and child malnutrition is a very, very big problem. When figures like India occupying sixth lowest in the World Hunger Index. The government gets very upset. But it's actually coming from our own data that we have to reject. The health of the nutrition level of our children and women in the country are extremely low, which is also related to the kind of agricultural situation that we are talking about. And lastly, the food safety concerns. What I mentioned about the increased use of hazardous chemicals leads to several concerns of food security and food safety. Sorry, that food systems are increasingly getting unsafe, and how to what to do about that. So these are the in terms of the new problems. I mean, you can add more to it. But the point I'm trying to say is that all this comes from a certain framing, the way we have gone about in policy making. The largest story of the presentation is about policies, and policy change happens, and policies are formulated or formed on the basis of some understanding of the problem, what is called the framing of the problem. In India, after India became independent in 1947, the whole framing of economic policy was in terms of industrialization. You have to urbanize and industrialize rapidly. India is a backward agrarian economy. You have to move into a forward-looking agricultural economy, industrial economy. And the transition was the main thing in which agriculture and the rural were supposed to disappear. They were seen as residuals, or they will eventually disappear in favor of industrial and modern sector, which will grow. The famous formulation of Marnovis in the second value plan we have adopted. In that, the role of agriculture is to feed, create more food, and what we call a cheap food regime need to be followed. That you produce more food so that the price of food is under control. If price of food is not under control and goes up, the whole accumulation process, the capital accumulation process leading to industrialization will be jeopardized. So government deliberately followed a policy of keeping the prices low, of producing more food, and food security was seen as the goal. Also, yes, Mary mentioned yesterday, there was a backlog of this 1943 famine that was very much there. From political discussions, but the whole framing was in this format that agriculture is not growing for itself. It's not growing for itself. It's actually a means to achieving something else, and something else is industrialization and what we call as modern industrial growth. In that, the approach we just followed, this is the framing of the problem as increasing productivity and creating more food, which actually controls the food prices. Then the approach that followed is what I call an extractive approach to natural resources. Natural resources are outside. They are outside the economic system. The economy is in the center. The economy wants to grow. So economy draws resources from the natural system as much as it wants. In the form of water, biomass, soil, whichever way you extract that and produce output. And whatever is not consumed, whatever is coming out as waste, is dumped back into the environment. So environment is seen as more as a source or a sink of resources, and it's not, economy is seen as something different from it. So this is the kind of framing that we followed, and all the problems that we listed in the first two slides, they all come eventually from this paradigm. So when we talk of policy change, the first and foremost task will be to change the framing of the problem. So change the paradigm, what we call paradigm is a term used by Thomas Kuhn, which means a kind of whole world view or set of interlinked kind of way of imagining things. The imagination has to change. Then when we talk about policy change cannot be implemented. You can't tweak one part of the policy and expect it to deliver. The whole approach to policy making has to change. The fundamental assumptions have to undergo a lot of change. So the extractive approach that we followed led to what can be called a worship of productivity. So raising agricultural productivity, yesterday Rajeshwari and mentioned about raising productivity per unit of land. That was a primary goal starting from the 1960s Green Revolution, and the whole approach was not to make agriculture or farmer rich. That was not the objective. Objective was that you produce more food and food becomes cheap, and that enables capital accumulation, growth of industrial sector, and eventually India moves to a more modern kind of sector. That is the way to frame things. So the root of the current crisis, all the issues that we mentioned earlier, lie in the framing of the issue or the paradigm that we followed so far. Now, how to change this? How to evolve a new paradigm? So, what are the critical things what is required from that? And evidence is already available. In water, it's very clear that we have to move away from this approach that we mentioned, the extractive approach, to what we call an ecosystem-based approach. You have to understand that the economy is essentially part of an ecosystem. It's a subsystem of the ecosystem. So the system is outside and economy functions there, and the ecosystem imposes certain limits and restraints. In Hindi we call it Maryada. Maryada means a limit up to which you can go. Those limits cannot be violated. Yesterday we also mentioned about planetary boundaries. So I am talking more local level, each ecology. Rajasthan desert has a certain ecology. Assam flood prone area has a certain ecology. Those things can be violated. Himalayas, as Devashish would say, is a very specific kind of ecosystem. So what can go on there, what kind of production process can happen there is dependent on the ecology, which actually puts a set of limits. That limits have to be respected. They can be violated. In water, you have to move from an extractive framework to an ecosystem framework, understanding the economy or the water use as part of an ecosystem. Water is not plentiful, water is limited. It's not a resource which can easily be recycled or reused. It occurs in a very specific format. First of all, it's not a resource either. You should look at it as a naturally occurring substance following its own laws of movement and replenishment, etc. That is a different way. It's a different framing or a different way of looking at the same way. In agriculture, we need to move beyond the worship of productivity, which has become the goal. More production. We have to produce so much of food. Population is growing, food demand is growing, so much more food we produce. Moving away from that. And also, this crisis happens, the typical government response is very, very short term, what we broadly call populism. The term can be different. It can be a kind of what you can actually call a knee-jerk kind of response. What are the knee-jerk responses that we have? One is that if you have more problems or more debt or something, farmer incomes are low, give them some money. Cash transfers. That's one simple solution. It's a huge program called Pradhan Mantri PM Kisan Samman Yojana. It gives around 60,000 crores to farmers every year. So direct income transfer to farmers or write off their loans. Farmers are in too much debt, write off their loans. Or give them high support prices, which is what the farmer unions are also asking for, or give them more subsidies. But there is subsidy currently more than 2 lakh crores and give more money. This is the kind of solution we are having. So we have to move beyond this paradigm and think afresh and think of a new approach, what Professor Reddy broadly called agroecology. That's the framework that we have to move to. Now, when we talk about policy change, I'll have 2-3 more slides. So this is about how policy change happens. As I mentioned, the discussion we are having right now is not about how to solve the agriculture problem. That's not the issue we are discussing. We are discussing how does the policy to agriculture change. What is required to bring about the change in the policy that agriculture is following or water is following. What are the elements of that? I think 5 elements I have listed here. 5 combination of 5 needs to be there. First, as I'm mentioning, an alternative framework is required. It can't be more of the same. You are doing something, you started a paradigm, the paradigm worked very well, green revolution in agriculture or water resource development in water, worked very well. But you can't keep increasing and going within that paradigm and expect to create more policies within that framework and expect the problems to be solved. That's not going to happen. You need a different framework. Framing is in the form of ecosystem, economy as a subsystem of ecosystem, agroecology as a dominant kind of way of looking at things. That kind of framing has to be there. Along with framing, you have to develop some ideas, some concepts. Sabsaji sitting, there's an RRB network which we were part of. We framed the problem of rainfed agriculture in a certain way. What are the ways to be done to it? The rainfed agriculture, the approach has to be different. And what needs to be done, we had a few concepts. Millets is one thing, promotion of millets could be one idea. So that's a workable kind of idea which we need to develop. I mean, government can develop it, society can develop it, anybody can develop it. But a concept is required. Then a concept cannot remain at a conceptual level, it has to be done on ground, it has to be practiced. So there has to be more proof of concept on the ground. And people stop taking here when you talk about policy change. But the point is that policy change is not going to happen like this. There is no lack of evidence. We always talk about evidence-based policy. I think policymakers are not really looking at any evidence anymore. There's enough evidence that there is child, 50% of our children are undernourished. Indian children are undernourished. There's a lot of evidence of that. There's tremendous evidence that migration is a big problem. People are going, COVID time, they all have to come back to their villages. Migration is a massive problem. There's no further evidence required for that. There's no further evidence to say that unemployment is the most important economic problem India is facing right now. There's no lack of evidence of that. But what kind of policy is coming out of that? Nothing. So from policy, as Sabitaji was mentioning, from practice to policy, or from an alternative framing to conceptual understanding to actually trying out pilots or something on the ground, to policy is a big jump. And the jump happens only if there are the other two factors are in place. One is that you have some strong champions within the system. When you talk about green revolution, as Rajesh would say, the name that normally comes to our mind is MS Swaminathan, Norman Borlaug, they integrated new technology. We probably also talk about C. Subramanian. But there are been a committed set of bureaucrats, like G. Shivaraman is the Secretary Agriculture, I should written up a lot. He was the one who actually pushed it in the government. Similarly, watershed program, I just come to that. There's a very strong bureaucrat within the government called Vijayshankar. He pushed the whole watershed program. That's how the whole Anandarao Committee and the new guidelines came up. This company. So there has to be some institutional anchor in government. Now we talk about natural farming. Andhra Pradesh, there are a lot of people who are supporting natural farming in government. All India level, we don't have any champion. We have to develop champion. We have to catch hold of people. Then only this scaling up will happen. That is the crucial link. How to find out how policy change actually happens. And then we have finally, that is like more of a change of policy, more at the level of expressing a wish or a kind of a saying that this needs to be done. But that has to be promised, has to be backed by substantial resource commitment. Money has to be devoted. Again, we talk about natural farming. Government has adopted, there's a national mission of natural farming also. But what is the funding commitment? 500 crores. Compared to 2 lakh crores which is given to 2 million rupees which is given to fertilizer subsidy. Yeah, you are giving that much. So these 5 things have to be in place. That is when policy change happens. In any of this missing, policy change will not happen. That's what I'm trying to say. And I had a few examples here. Watershed program. Watershed is a different way of looking at water resource. It's not just water developing water resource, looking at water in an ecosystem kind of way. That has now come into policy in a small big way. And that happened not only because watershed, the new framing was there, or a new concept of integrated water resource management was there, nor that it was tried out by a lot of organizations, including my own organization and many others like Vasan. On the ground, national policy is a new way of conceptualizing that have been worked on. It is not yet out in public realm. But that has a very comprehensive view of water, completely different from the way we look at water right now. Unfortunately, this has no taker. Government, nobody is accepting it. So the policy is there, the concept is there, the framing is there, ideas are there, experience is there. But scaling up is not happening, or fundamental change in policy is not happening because there is no champions or institutional anchors there. That's what I would say about agriculture, natural farming also. And the striking counter example, I think Samia and others will be talking about it more, is Orissa millet mission. So millet was a concept as part of our network. We thought that is one crop which needs to be supported, which should be integrated and promoted. And that idea was tried out in areas in a practical way, ground was tried out in Orissa itself. And it became a concept with proof of concept was also there. Then people like Sabya, Dinesh, who is not here, yes, just do it. So they worked intensively with government trying to scale up the whole effort. And that's how it's got concepted by the government and became one. There are many people like Saurabh Gangadhar, people are there who actually supported the whole thing. So this is the way policy changes. So to conclude, there are 2 other programs also and we can discuss independently. And say cognitive frameworks are very much required. But framework for policy change will not happen on its own, not by at all by creating more evidence. It has to be kind of scaling up the movement from evidence to policy. So from knowledge or understanding or conceptual level, a lot of practices on the ground, but that policy, knowledge policy and practice linkage comes up when there are strong anchors within government and this good thing is taken up at that level. So that is where we have to think of how to change policy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Long live India and France friendship.